We are live. Hello and welcome to the Lion Show. I'm your host with the most, Robert Lyon. Today, we have the great pleasure of talking to a sales legend. He's been in the B2B section for 30 years plus, Brendan Mcadams. So, Brendan, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Robert. Thank you.
For all the listeners that haven't maybe heard of you, how about you just sell like a little elevator pitch, kind of who you are and what you're up to right now?
I've been in sales, enterprise sales for, let's just say, a long time. And, a lot of large, Fortune 50 accounts, Citigroup, AT&T, Bell Labs, Cigna have been customers of mine. And then in the last few years, I've kind of gone off and been a consultant to startups and so forth. And in the last year, I really kind of pivoted to do more sales coaching for early stage companies to kind of help founders in particular and early stage companies execute better at sales. So that's kind of what I've been focused on.
Yeah, I love that. So like what was your first sales gig, and like how long ago was that? And basically like how did you end up all the way here where you're masterminding these big founder things? It's in like a short.
Well, my first sales gig was like when I was a kid. I made these orthopedic belt buckles, and my dad's an orthopod. And so I would go to trade shows and set up a booth and talk to docs and sell them these bronze belt buckles that were the official symbol essentially of orthopedics. And so I did that. And I can remember back then I used to write a check for like $750 to the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery every month to place an ad. And it scared the daylights out of me because $750 at the time was just a huge amount of money. And so I've been doing it ever since then. I guess my big opportunity for me was I got a chance to work selling to AT&T when I was really young and inexperienced. And that really kind of was a crucible for me in terms of teaching me all the things that I started to learn. The curiosity that kind of developed for sales was at that point, because just the complexity of the sales, the kinds of people I was dealing with, scientists and engineers and executives and so forth. That was really kind of the formative beginning for me.
Lots of moving parts. What were you kind of selling to AT&T? I'm just curious.
I was selling application development tools and relational database technology. So I worked for Informix and at the time, and I did also systems integration work and so that was so software, enterprise software.
Have you mostly sold software and kind of for tech industries? Is that the founders you work with, or is it a range of things?
No, I did a lot of different stuff, systems development work and kind of custom projects and that sort of thing, and a lot more solution selling as and then, but in the last several years, I've kind of, a lot of my expertise has been in healthcare lately. So I spent a lot of time in healthcare technology. And so it'd be a lot of companies that were either consumer facing, patient facing, or in some cases, physician facing sorts of solutions. I did a lot of consulting and kind of sales coaching in that area. And that's kind of, and so now what I've broadened is to kind of help tech players, tech founders and people that are selling for startups, relatively early stage startups, and helping them execute better.
I really think, just tech sales and software sales is kind of the future of a lot of great sales opportunities and jobs. You know what I mean? Being B2B, it's already a huge industry, but it's just going to keep getting bigger. More companies are going to hire more salespeople to sell software and things like that. I guess for like a new sales listener listening, how do you think they would find a good tech company to become a good salesman for them? And, how can they tell if it's a good opportunity?
Yeah, well, I guess that's an excellent question. I would say if you could start out as an SDR, if you really are kind of brand new to it, I suppose one of the things I'd say is it's nice to get a lot of touches, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're really try and start off with a good company, first of all, someone that's got some amount of market visibility if you can, and start in even just an SDR role where you're on the phone and you're in emailing and you're talking and you're getting a lot of touches, you're getting a lot of experience, you're getting probably some training, and you're probably getting a chance to work with outside salespeople or, account executives, and some of that sales knowledge will rub off on you just by being around people like that. You get to see a lot of things happen. That would probably be the best way. And then you pick up an occasional book and learn, that way as well. But I think the big thing is to try and see if you can get in as even, an SDR or a junior account exec. And these days, I think a lot of companies are always looking for salespeople. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, the pitch I would make is, hey, hire me for a month, and if you don't like me, fire me, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I actually shut down a sales opportunity this morning. That's what I was doing all morning, trying to negotiate contracts and stuff. And I just decided I just didn't want to sign the NDA because they would been able to hold it against me for 7 years. And I was like, well, I'll
7 years.
Another.
Yeah,
I know. I thought that was way too long. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So it's just always interesting that there's so many opportunities. But to get in with a good company that's on the rise, I feel like for any salesman out there, that's kind of the ideal place to be, to position yourself and to push yourself out there. So when you're talking to these founders, right, they have an idea, they have a vision, but they don't know how to probably sell it, right, and sell it to the masses. Yeah. And I think I was watching a video and you said, build your business while you're talking to your customers. I was just wondering if you could maybe tell me, how do you do that? And in a way, first you start with a customer avatar, right? And then you just try and get customers to buy into your idea first. I mean, I know it's kind of a broad topic, but if you have any insight on that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah. And I think this is critically important, that what you're kind of touching on, that is for any founders or anyone in the entrepreneurial space, you've got a business you're going, it's really, really helpful to kind of figure out through a lot of conversations, if possible, who your ideal customers are, and be able to define them in some very specific way. What's their geography, what's their revenue, what specific industry are they, what kind of job description might that person have, or the people that are involved have, and then talk to those people early on before you're building, if you can, ideally. And then you're going to learn a tremendous amount as a result of that. And what that does, it does a number of things. One of which is it allows you to learn about your business, learn about the requirements, learn about the workflow, learn about the obstacles, the people that are going to be involved in the decision-making process, who wins, who loses. You learn all those things. The earlier you learn those things, the better, because then what it does is, over time, the more of those conversations you have, the more expert you become at it. And so then you're in a position where you go to talk to the next person and you're teaching them. And that really empowers you, right? And so you're in a much better position to influence them and support them and help them, which is kind of like the next thing, which is, if you go into that conversation, more of those conversations, with the idea that you're trying to help them, then they're that much more receptive. And because you have this information behind you, you have all this knowledge that you've accumulated through conversations, you're probably in a position to help them. And if you can't, you walk away. And, be able to walk away from a deal. Like if I'm selling to, I've got a product that's for manufacturing, and I end up talking to someone in pharmaceuticals or transportation, it's not a fit. And so the conversation gets to a point where you figure out, I can't help them. And you go away, that's not a customer. You can keep talking to them, but it's a social call.
Yeah.
And then ultimately what happens is, then you think about, how do I make them convince you that they should be a customer? And, because it is a mutual sort of relationship. I mean, a lot of people, when they think of sales, they think, I'm convincing you to buy something. I'm manipulating you into buying something. And that's really, most of the time, with most complex sales, that's not the case. What happens is, you come to some mutual agreement that, hey, this is good for us both. And if you go into a sales opportunity with that in mind, I think you're in a much better position, position of much greater strength, if you will.
Yeah. I had one of my mentors, they were basically, he was making the script for the company, and he just started dialing the customers, just kept dialing, and he was making the script as he went along. And I was always so blown away that he did that. So I think that's an incredible skill to have but I just love the idea, as opposed to building an entire business and then trying to find out if your customer likes it. It's just best if like you have, like, I guess a lot of big companies, they probably have big teams where they're like running all these tests and talking to different customers and things like that, probably. But
well, the thing that your buddy was doing that was, I think, particularly smart is you have enough of those conversations, and you're picking up the language, the terms, the metrics, all the things that especially if you're going after a particular market, particular kind of customer, going back to your point about the ideal customer and the persona. If you're talking to a lot of people in the same type, they're going to have the same language. They're going to have the same issues. They're going to have the same metrics. And so you're going to sound, after a few of those calls, you're going to sound pretty knowledgeable. And when you start to sound knowledgeable, people are going to stay on the phone with you.
Yeah.
And that's where, going back to your point about to where you start, is it's getting that experience as quickly as you can.
Yeah. And then you also find out the questions that they have, and then you can make like a little video for it, and then you can add it
exactly,
because it's going to come up a lot.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Cool. So with most of these big companies, they want to figure out how to get as many leads as possible, but I just think outbound and B2B is just so powerful. You can find people to pick up the phone and call them, and these cold emails, cold texts. I'm just wondering, is that like, when you come into these businesses, are you setting up their whole sales system for the potential success, or like,
well, ideally what I'm trying to do in most cases is I'm trying to help them get the first 10 customers, or get the next, or maybe they've got 3 or 4 or 5 customers, but they don't know how to scale yet, because they sold to people that are close to them, that they know, and they don't yet know how to make it a repeatable process. And what I help them do is formalize that and put kind of standards in place, and optimize the best of what they do. And then what I want to do is get them to scale to some level, and then step out of the way. And at that point, I want to set up the infrastructure so they've got a CRM in place, perhaps, and they've got a standard contracting process, and they've got some sales materials, and then they hire someone. And at that point, they know who to hire. They know what kind of person to hire. They've got a track record. They've got run rate, what that means is they can hire a higher caliber person. Because if you're a rock star sales manager that knows their stuff and is successful, you don't want to go to some shop that's a train wreck, right? They may have 10 or 20 customers, but they don't have anything in place. A lot of people don't want to do, a lot of professional sales, executives or sales managers, they would much rather step into a place that they can see the pipeline, they know where it's going, and they can just hire the right sort of people and make money. And that's kind of what I try and help them do, is put some of that kind of infrastructure in place so that they can scale and hire the right person.
That's awesome. Is that kind of what lights a fire in your belly, like getting it to that point where you're like, you see all the systems and like getting it all lined up, and then getting everybody moving in the right direction?
Some amount of the systems is kind of cool, but what I really like is seeing what the transformation that founders can make, because I think they don't give themselves credit as salespeople, and they have to kind of shift their mindset at some level, but they have certain kind of innate abilities that the average salesperson probably doesn't have. They're the person that can make the decision. They're the person that invented the thing. They understand the underpinnings at a fundamental level. And so when they go in and talk to a customer, they've got a tremendous credibility if they can leverage it, if they can figure out how to make the most of it. And also some of sales, as you know, a lot of it's a pattern, it's a process. And if you recognize the steps along the process, it's much easier to get there to where you want to go. And I think a lot of founders, technical people in particular, they're very wired logically towards building something, and that emotional, non-logical, decision-making process is probably not, they're not necessarily comfortable with it.
Are most
Does that
of the
make sense?
founders? Yeah, no, it totally does. Are most of the founders like visionaries? I can't remember what book it was, but there's like visionaries, and then there's people that actually do the things. Or are there any habits that these founders all seem to have?
They, I guess, yeah, they're that's interesting you say that. They tend to be pretty analytical most of the time. They tend to be pretty process oriented. They've got things in place. They're very kind of process oriented. They tend to get buried too much in detail. Oftentimes, customers are often much less interested in detail than the person that built the tool. They're
Right.
oftentimes fixated on, look at how sophisticated this little widget is, or this thing is. And they kind of can, they sometimes have difficulty translating that into the value that a customer gets.
Right.
Yeah.
That was always one of my sales problems, is I would over explain and just tell them way too much about how cool I thought it was. And then they wouldn't care. They just want that result,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just kind of how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm running an accelerator here in Baltimore right now. And we had 15 companies pitch to kind of to be selected. It was the short list.
That's cool.
It was, and it was surprising how many of them weren't able to kind of distill down what it was they did and why it was valuable in the presentation. They had 5 minutes to kind of present this, and it's because I think in some ways they're so close to it, they just think, oh, I know how this works. And so they're in the weeds, but no, they need to kind of step back and realize that, oh, I have to explain this at this high level, very simple, very, very specific and precise. This is what it does. This is why it matters. And this is why you should, this is why you should want it, but they get all wound up in the details.
I super nervous, not their comfort zone,
Yeah.
So is it kind of like a Shark Tank situation, and you're like in the judges, or what is it like?
Well, it was literally the sort of criteria was here's the process. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get 5 minutes. You're going to present. Here's roughly the structure we want to see. And then where there's gonna be 5 minutes of Q&A. And so, and there are a bunch of really good companies, and you had to pick 5, and but it was, they had applied already. There were like well over 100 that applied. And then we winnowed it down to these 15 there, and then picked the 5 based on their presentation and the potential, and that what we think we could do for them.
Yeah. You think all 5 are going to be smash hits?
I don't know. I'm impressed. I'm impressed though. I mean, there are a couple that could really scale. One's
Cool.
a dating app, one's and they're all very different. So one's a dating app, one's basically Uber. No, not Uber, Airbnb for boats, which by the way,
Nice.
could be huge.
Boat
Really
B&B.
could be huge.
Well, everything's going to be underwater in the future, so it'll be huge.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So there's some pretty cool little ideas out there. Yeah.
That is cool. And I'm just wondering, so these investors, are you helping them negotiate with these companies? Is that kind of how you play a part, or are you also investing or with these founders? Or
no, I'm not doing any investing. I'm strictly acting as a resource to investors. So typically the way it works is an investor is getting ready to put make a significant investment in a portfolio, in a company to add to their portfolio. And what I am basically is an inexpensive insurance policy to make it more likely that they're going to sell, and they're going to make sales and get customers. And if the thing about early stage startups is, if they can generate revenue and get the right customers on board, they can stay in business and stay in business indefinitely. and ultimately figure things out and get traction and grow. But if the big risk for an investor is that first period of time where they write that check for 250K or whatever it is,
Right.
they need to get traction. They can't just be developing. Now that's, there are these unicorns that are getting funded out there that are getting 200 million and 500 million, and that's a whole different problem. But for a lot of small startups that get 250,000, 500,000, what they want is they need to get some traction so they can get to the point where they can get that next round and then hire and then grow. And oftentimes, if they do it right, they can probably get enough organic growth through sales that they can get revenue that they have, either at a minimum, they have more leverage with the next round of investment, or they may not need investment. If you start generating $100,000 a quarter, you can scale. You may not need to go out and get funding again.
Need that initial fuel to get off the ground, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
What a cool world to live in, man. That sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah.
At least for
there's
me,
a lot.
Well,
There's just a tremendous amount of potential these days. And there's so many things that you can do, and the tools are so inexpensive, and you can learn so much so quickly through podcasts like this. You hear stories and you get a good perspective, and there are just lots of different things you can learn. And the resources are so inexpensive now that you really can do some pretty remarkable things and pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I'm coaching startup founder that's got an app for behavioral health, and she's basically going to be able to launch it via text for pennies, literally pennies a transaction. There's an app that there's basically a fundamental, like a core component that she can buy for like $100, that's basically a text server. And then she's going to pay for text messages via Twilio, and she's going to be able to do a MVP for probably under a couple $100 and figure something out in 2 weeks, do another iteration for another couple $100, less than $1,000. She's going to have a legitimate product. Wow. It's pretty amazing.
That is very cool. And she's probably going to help people with it if it's,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's like the impact is cool with all these businesses as well. So when you guys are like picking these businesses, I'm just curious, and then we'll get back to sales, but like,
sure.
How much is it the founder? How much is it the idea? How much is it the sales potential? Like, do you guys have like a whole real strict, like way of deciding which one it is? Or is it kind of like a gut feeling sometimes? Like...
That's funny. Yeah, that's a great question, because, in this accelerator, it was a lot of gut. It was like, what did you think? A lot of it's the founder. I think if the founder's compelling, they believe, they can articulate, they have a certain level of energy, they can explain the problem. And then that benefits us, because then we can listen to the problem and go, oh, that resonates. I can see how you could grow that business, and I can see how you're going to execute. So the founder's a lot of it. And then the idea is probably second, the market potential is another big one. Is it, how big of a opportunity might it be? And how difficult is it to, is it new ground entirely, or is someone really in the space, and how disruptive is this thing, that they're coming at with?
I like the word disruptive. That's a good, that's awesome. All right. So I now have some selfish questions I need to ask you, my man.
Sure.
So I'm transitioning from, being a salesman and basically I crushed it for quite a few companies, to now I'm training sales teams. Yeah. And I would love some advice from you on maybe best practices, how to manage people, just any insight that you have on, number one, let's start with hiring. So I would say, 80% of salesmen kind of suck, right? There's going to be like that 20% that are like the golden superheroes. How do you determine when you're maybe hiring and things like that, what it's going to look like, that they're going to either excel, or how do you go about picking good salesmen to start?
Oh man, that is tough.
Yeah,
I heard the rule the other day, which I think I've sort of lived by this anyway, but I mean, I heard this, and that is, you hire slow and fire fast.
Right.
And I guess to hire someone, I think some of it's again, we're going back to gut feel. You got enough experience, you've been at it for a while, you kind of know. I don't know how much value references are, because they're going to generally cherry pick ones that are friends and so forth. If you can get references from customers, I think that's probably really solid. If someone can give you if you can, and I'm coaching a couple of people now where I explain to them that, listen, you become good enough and really have established relationships with your customers, then when you go to your next gig, your next job, use customers as references, because that's really compelling, because you've really, if they're willing to come, and basically talk about you and refer you, then that's a big plus. You might hire them on an interim basis. Like, I like this idea of saying, hey, let's try you out for a week. Here's a project for you, and do this. I'm going to have you come in, and I'd like you to make a bunch of phone calls to these people. Here's a list. Let me know what and then that's probably the easiest way, or and then pay them for it. Pay them for that week.
I like that. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And then once you have, let's say your first sales team, right?
Yeah.
How do you think micromanaging is really important? Do you think motivating? Like, how do you, I guess the fastest way to train people probably is to get them on the phone, get them dialing, put them in real life experiences, right?
Yeah.
And then the problem is, in order to go from that to actually having KPIs, right? It's like 90 days, and you just don't know. And it's almost like 90 days of either waste or burn. Like, I guess my question is, let's start. How do you motivate a sales team, and how do you train a sales team? How do you like to do that?
Well, the training, I think, is in some ways the easy part. It's the motivating that's the harder part. I mean, I don't know how much you can motivate people. I mean, except to believe in them. If they feel like you're encouraging them and that you believe that they can do it, then the only question then to me is this the kind of person that's driven that way? Like that is motivated by someone believing that they can do it, or challenging them. Hey, you can do, I don't know that I'm able to motivate someone that doesn't really want to do the work. They have to, you kind of have to like the work at some level. I mean, the thing about sales is like, I really enjoy it. I think I enjoy the conversations. I enjoy the unknown of it, the difficulty of it. I have a kind of phrase. I said, you have to learn to love the grind, is what I always say. If you love the grind, the misery of it, if you accept it as a certain misery and say, I love this part of it, then, and if you find people like that, I think the rest gets easier.
Embrace the suck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then, I mean, I guess like you pay them good, you train them good, and you give them a good opportunity. I don't know. I have a commission-based business right now, and I brought like 10 people in for the first round, and like 2 of them became rock stars. Everybody else kind of fizzled out. So it's just kind of interesting. And I thought everybody was going to be a savage, and it just didn't happen like that. But I think I just got to hire a lot, like hire from abundance, and then give them a shot, and then kind of see where everybody lands, and then just pray for the best.
Are they motivated? Like, do you find that the two that really thrived, that did well for you, were they motivated by money, or what was it that made them successful?
They were super just motivated, and everybody was really motivated in the beginning. They were the ones that actually just put in the time to persevere through and get to the promised land. I guess they got deals faster, and everybody else kind of fizzled out because they just like, oh, it's too hard. It was one of those kind of interesting situations. But then the only people that got the results are the ones that actually did some time management, and then were able to commit, good hours of the day. Yeah, the rest of the people kind of probably had like other jobs and other things, but everyone was real excited at the beginning. It really just came down to the ones that were able to actually sit down and do the work, So it's hard to find someone. How is anybody going to know if they're actually going to do the work in the beginning until they actually can do it, So interesting.
And
then I guess you do Well, actually, I've got one more question. So I
Sure.
know you became like a sales kind of freelancer, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of
Yeah.
your gig for a little while.
Yeah.
How
A
did you
little while. Yeah.
transition from salesman of big companies to being able to have multiple offers and kind of do it on your own?
Yeah. So that's a great, I like that question because it's something that uh, I've been wrestling with this for a long time. And that is, I was struck by an article that Tom, uh, what's his name? Oh, geez. Um, I'll think of it in a second, but was in Fast Company a long time ago where he talks about being your own brand. Tom Peters, and he wrote this a long time ago, probably before you were born. And it was the idea was that everyone is their own business in a way. Even if you're in a big company, you're kind of your own business, and that always struck me as kind of fascinating. And then I always kind of thought that there was a role as companies got smaller and there more opportunity to start your own business over the last several decades. I always thought that there'd be an opportunity for someone to start a company where you made everything virtual or everything contract, like you're a CEO and you contract out every position. And you see this happen over and over again. HR is a contracted position nowadays, and accounting certainly is, and you're legal. Now you can have a company and not have an attorney. You just hire an outside firm, hire an outside advertising agency. And I was thinking, why couldn't you hire an outside salesperson?
Right.
And the truth of the matter is you could. And then so I had a 2 or 3 in a row instances where I got hired by someone. And in fact, it's a chapter in my book where I actually talk about how you can get a job, but you don't know what the job is until you get on board. Because people hire you for a job and then you get there and then they change everything. And your comp plans change, territories change, management changes, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, that sucks. I don't want to do that anymore. I mean, because you come on board and you take a job with someone, and then the minute you're there and something changes, whoa, I didn't bargain for this. And now what do? You quit? And so then all of a sudden you got this blemish on your resume where you were there for a week or a month or 3 months, and then you leave. You can't, well, now you can't, nowadays you can do that, right? More. But the way I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go out and be a consultant. And I should have done it years earlier is what I should have done, because you can definitely make a living just being a hired gun, a salesperson for one or more companies at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the roadmap obviously kind of worked out for you because now you're working with founders and investors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's it's a
Yeah.
good way to do it. It just is. You don't hear that word of like a freelance salesman. It's just not like
right. And in fact, that's a book. I'm writing a book on this, and I've just got to get it out. Another book. Yeah. It's like a how-to manual for people, because I think there are a lot of salespeople, salespeople in particular are at the whim of the company. And so from year to year, you could be, you could make, like, if you're an employee in HR or accounting and you make 100K that year, next year, chances are you're going to make 100K or 110 or whatever. But if you're a salesperson and you're making 200K one year, you could easily make 100K the next year for reasons completely out of your control. Territory changes, comp plan changes, you get a cranky boss that you're working for, the company goes through a down period, the products, whatever, any number of things. And as a salesperson, your livelihood is so tied to the company in those situations. And, and so this is a way, if you're a freelancer, you're your own agency, sales agency, you can basically choose your customers. You can choose your line of work.
Yeah. And then you're not at the whim. Cause I mean, a lot of these sales guys, they're making tons of money for the company. So they know they're a moneymaker, but they're also locked in contracts, and sometimes the culture changes and all kinds of things. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just a couple more sales questions. So
sure.
In your long career of, B2B, if there was ever like a period where you were just like on fire, I'm just wondering if you can think of anything that would steer you to believe like, this is why I was crushing it in that period of my life or in my period of sales. Like, is there any habits that you were doing or like things that really just kind of, you recognize like, man, I was doing so good at that period and it was because of these couple things, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if you have anything comes to mind.
Yeah. I think I had the benefit of having enterprise type accounts, right? So they're large accounts. So there's opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity if you can find it and figure out how to coordinate it and so forth. And the thing for me is, and this does not in the same way translate if you're in a sales situation where you sell a point solution and you sell that customer and they can't buy anything else and you move on to the same degree. But I spent a lot of time developing relationships with my customers and and being kind of very upfront about just being very genuine and I have sort of a Zen attitude about sales, and that
Yeah.
is that things are going to happen. And so I take a very kind of things will happen when they're supposed to happen mentality. I at the same time, I'm a big fan of the idea of, I also write about this, and that is, I think one thing salespeople have to be good at is compressing time. If they can figure out ways to get things done more quickly. In fact, this is probably, if you want a single fundamental, this is probably the thing that it's the little things over and over again. It's like little fundamental things that are critically important. Number one, and that is show up on time, be prepared, have an agenda, don't waste people's time, things like that. Like if you have an hour, don't use an hour of someone's time. If you have an hour-long meeting, get it done in 45 minutes. If you have, if you can do a meeting, if you can get to the point where you tell customers, listen, I need 10 minutes of your time. Nobody asks for 10 minutes. If you ask for 10 minutes, oh, I can find 10 minutes for you, and then get it done in 10 or 8. And if you can do that, they'll talk to you anytime you need, typically. And so it's little things like that. It's developing relationships. It's compressing time. So, and if you develop those relationships in a way where you really kind of, you've got this Zen approach, like I don't have to sell you. I don't care. I don't care about the sale. Then those people, your customers, will tend to help you make that sale because you're in it for the right reasons. Right. It's a little bit Pollyannish. It sounds a little kumbaya, but I think it really does work. It does telegraph that you're in it for the right reasons. And I think if you're in a sales situation, if you're a salesperson, that attitude is a superpower, I think.
Yeah, I love it. Show up and have integrity.
Yep.
And then just another question. So in your long career, like, how did you avoid burnout? Because burnout is very real for salesmen, especially that are like, charge every single day. Yeah. So burnout is real. Do you have any advice on how to not burn out? And just
man. Well, first of all, this is a satisfying answer or not, but I like this. This is what I like to do. So it's fun. Mm-hmm. So it's not really that tiring. It's got a lot easier for me because I don't, as an independent business, I can choose who I work for and work with. And so I don't have a lot of the office politics that I used to have and navigate through. Like for whatever reason, I don't mind politics in another company's environment. Like if my customer, I'm quite adept at adapting to and dealing with the internal politics at my customer. I expect it, but it makes me crazy in my own company when my own company does things that are that are unproductive or destructive to the goals of the company overall. But I got a couple hobbies I get away from, and like the kind of hobbies that I have are like, some of them are like making things. Like I'm kind of amateur machinist. Cool. And so the thing about that is, when I do that sort of stuff, it sort of completely takes me out of the work. Away from it. I get sort of into that, and I kind of completely decompress. So
yeah, I've always needed at least one day a week off where I can just totally go and do something completely different. Otherwise,
what do you do? What do you just?
Well, we go. We got into kayaking for a while. We did some, four-wheeling and stuff like that. So we just go out and get lost in the nature, kind of woods kind of stuff.
Oh, cool. Are you when you kayak, are you like whitewater kayaking?
No, just go to random lakes and like
lakes and so
paddle
forth.
around
Okay.
and whatever with my girlfriend. I've done kayaking back in the day, but that's too intense.
I did. They have this thing down in North Carolina that was like for competitive kayaking. They had like an artificial river kind of a thing to set up in North Carolina. So I can't remember. And I tried to learn how to do the Eskimo roll thing.
Oh yeah.
And man, I think I almost drowned a couple times. And
it is kind of scary. As long as you can kick out, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
No, it's just fun to go out there and paddle around.
That's cool.
See some
That's
fish
very
and
cool.
Oh man. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I do have a couple more questions, but before we get into that, how about if people want to find you on social media or find your books, what's your websites and how can they?
Oh yeah. So I'm on Twitter, Brendan Mcadams, all one word. And then on LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn, same. And then, if someone wants to learn more, or I write a newsletter that goes out every 5 to 7 days where I talk about some aspect of B2B sales particularly. And I just do that. If you want to join my newsletter, there'll probably be a link in the show notes, I guess. And then another thing is I do consults. So free consult, talk about if you got a specific issue, technical issue, or a sales issue from a B2B standpoint, you want to talk through it, or you got a challenge or an opportunity and you want to bounce it off me. It's not a sales pitch. I just chat with you and try and understand, and maybe I can give you a couple perspectives and a couple things to work through. And and if you put that link in there too, that's another way to reach me.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll have both those links in the show notes below. So just two more questions that I'm kind of asking everybody that comes on the show.
Sure.
What is like one habit that you started recently or that you started a long time ago that you can actually say, yes, this had an impact in a good way on my life? Is there impact is kind of the word that I'm curious for.
Oh yeah, this is one's easy. I got a treadmill.
Nice.
And I now I walk every day on the treadmill and listen to a podcast at the same time. So I kill two birds with one stone. And the way I did it, and I'm kind of particular about it, is I spent $5 and bought an app called Streaks. It's on the iPhone, and it reminds you. And so what I'm trying to do is there's the Jerry Seinfeld methodology, which is he has a calendar and he has to write a joke every day, and then he puts an X in the day on the calendar. And the idea is don't break the streak. Don't ever break the streak. And so I'm using this tool to do like a half a dozen things. And one of them is make sure I write in my journal every day. And one of them is to be on the treadmill every day, and meditate. So, which I need something to remind me and to keep track of. And then once you get 7 or 8 or 9 days in a row, you're like, oh, I can't miss now.
Can't mess it up. Yeah.
Yeah. That's been huge that's actually, and that really, for me, it works.
No, that's what I love. I like to hear what works. That's the whole thing with all these podcasts. I hope something works. And then just one more question. And
sure.
It's kind of philosophical or whatever, but what motivates you? What do you think actually motivates you? What gets you going?
Oh, this is I sort of view life as it's sort of like toil, like it's sort of work. It's not meant I've come to the conclusion that it's not about happiness. It's about a purpose. And so the things that I do these days, what motivates me about them is I see a kind of a bigger purpose. And this accelerator, for example, is a way to give back. It's a way to work with people. And so to me, that sort of drives me these days. I like conversations with people. I like learning. I find it's more interesting now than ever to learn new stuff. And I find out how much stuff I didn't know. So Yeah, I mean, I like, you know, I guess what's driven me, or what I really think about is just having having a specific purpose. Does that answer your question?
No, it totally does. I think purpose is very important, and I like I said, it's not about happiness, it's about purpose. And purpose definitely gets you out of bed, keeps you going, especially if you see that you can help people or touch other people's lives in some way or your own.
I, I'm considerably older than you are, and and I look at people that are older than I am, and my dad's like this. I have a good buddy whose father is like 101 and got a hip replacement like a year ago at a like 100. Nuts.
Yeah,
But these my dad and this guy and others that I know, they're old, in their 80s or 90s or 100, and they're driven. They've got things to do, and I think there's a direct correlation with having things to do and staying alive and
yeah,
being, and so if you've got things that excite you, that thrill you, and that keep you busy, and that are work at some level, I think those things keep you alive and keep you moving forward,
yeah. Keep you
like a shark.
engaged with
If you-
life.
Yeah. It's like a shark, right? What do they say about sharks? If they have to keep moving or they die, right?
Exactly. Just keep looking for that next meal. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, man. I really appreciate your time. I think everybody definitely got a lot of great insight. So please like, share, subscribe. Do you have any last words for the audience?
No, this is great. Oh no, I will say something, and that is the way I found you is I listened to you talk about how to start a coaching program, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was the thing I loved about it was boom, 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 boom. It was like five specific, I think they had that right, like five specific steps you had to go through. And I thought you did just a really well, I think you really kind of summarized and distilled it down into steps that I thought were actionable. So that's how I discovered your podcast. And I just thought you did a great job on that. So, kudos.
Appreciate that. No, all the feedback I need it, so we can keep making it better and keep improving, keep getting
Yeah,
awesome
it was
people
good. It
like
was
you
really
on
good.
the show.
I recommend it. I highly recommend you listen to it.
All
So not
right.
you, of course, you've already listened to it.
I listen to myself all the time. I think I'm awesome. All right. That's today's show, though, everybody. Like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you learn anything, and definitely share this with other people. I really appreciate it. All right. Bye.